Shattered. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. The Old Testament, Proverbs 22:6. 1950. In chapter 1 of Shattered Dreams by Peter Josie, a thrilling first-hand account of island politics in St. Lucia after independence, he uses this proverb to contextualize the trauma of various and barbarous forms of corporal punishment that pass for training of young men and women. Quote, Mr. Schoolmaster, Henry, a.k.a. Coquine, was reputed to gleefully apply with a heavy and precise hand his cowhide leather belt on the backs of boys who were either late or who were slow in grasping his learnt English grammar, or who he may have himself caught staring out blankly through an open window, thereby assuming that that particular victim was inattentive. In those days, parents did not complain about the use of force in schools because it was believed that the enforcers of discipline were on board with an adage taken from Proverbs 13:24. He who spares the rod hates his son, but he who loves him is diligent to discipline him. How that came to justify brutality is still bewildering. But it was my experience approximately 10 years later, when fresh from college, I taught history and English at Wilmer's School, established in 1729, the Caribbean's second oldest high school. It was the revered alma mater of Harry Belafonte. I thought of myself at age 21 as enlightened, but soon discovered the pervasiveness of one's socialization. And to teach, if you are sincere, is indeed very stressful. Therefore, without any further exculpatory explanation, I confess I must have lost my cool when a student responded to the question in class. I said, "Macmillan, where is the clause in the sentence I've written?" Followed by a wave of amused laughter, the answer was, "Sir, it's up there on the blackboard." My reaction was impulsive. With a racket-less swing of my tennis forearm, I delivered a classic contrecoup to the back of the stand-up comedian's head. Mea Culpa. I read yesterday that a much mightier blow could have shattered the brain in the front of his skull, a focal phenomenon involving a contusion opposite the actual site of impact. From the report of the doctor conducting the autopsy on Abraham Lincoln, the bullet to the back of the head had caused the front of his skull to shatter. Fortunately, Macmillan was unhurt, but he swore that his parents would revenge this battery. He was the son of a prominent person, but at that precise time, his wife and himself were at loggerheads. I was subjected to separate attacks and reflected on the fact that I had not struck in anger, but instinctively against class interruption. It appeared there, as a consequence of their domestic feud, Macmillan had most of the creature comforts, but not the comfort of united and loving parents. They both recognized the child's insecurity and appealed to me as a young mentor to rescue him from the paths of iniquity. In this exercise, the student fortunately cooperated and eventually overcame the more serious effects of his isolation. Several years later, after my return from England, it was apparent whenever we met that he was walking in the footsteps of his father, and we would laugh and make jokes about a chastisement which he acknowledged had spared him from a rudderless existence. In the 1970s, Martin of Wall Street, whom I heard of, spoke about experiences as a student on Meadowbrook Memories, a church school with successful alumni. Before he migrated to America, he was a very progressive but not particularly bright student. But he surpassed all the disastrous predictions of his unqualified teachers. One forecasted that only imprisonment would stem his rebellious conduct. Savagely beaten with a cane sounds blood-curdling, but wasn't contrary to the well-intentioned claim that the Bible instructs parents to spank with a rod. But the term the rod of discipline, and as Quicklin above, who was the full enlightenment of such biblical edict, is clearly metaphorical. It refers not to beatings with sturdy stick, but to parental authority that is reliable, says family psychologist John Rosemond. The key to effective discipline is an attitude, a certain presentation style, not consequences of punishment. Martin, whom I affectionately call Martin of Wall Street, discovered when at college in New York that he was dyslexic and had been for all his life. But the professors in America responded with empathy and understanding, not with the disdain meted out to him in Jamaica when he tried to explain that, quote, the letters were playing jumping jacks. That's why he couldn't read well. And the figures were playing musical chairs. That's why the mathematical rubric was touch and go for him. This was remedied by the SEEK treatment, SEEK, and he wants to help fund a program to test students entering high school in Jamaica and identify any learning issues. His sincerity is palpable. So was the excruciating pain of dehumanizing disciplining at school. The headmaster would, after Monday morning worship, summon to his office those with 4 or more detentions in the previous week. As he sat waiting his turn, Martin of Wall Street heard the door close shut, and then the whop, 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 whop of the cane on the clothed body of another terrified offender, followed by gasps of suppressed moaning, because tough men never cry when hurt. Put both hands on the seat of the chair before you, Mr. Bowman, and bend over, intoned the slave driver cum principal. During the ordeal, Martin's whole being was euphemistically shattered into splinters of the rod of correction, not physically, but his childlike dreams, his aspirations, his self-esteem were all shattered as they exploded into 1,000,000 splinters. Perhaps, like Humpty Dumpty, never to be put together again. Martin Bowman said it in his podcast. Teachers and Jamaican schools in the 70s, and sadly even nowadays, are not equipped with measures like cognitive testing that could identify a child's learning problems and provide them with proper modern treatment, as I was able to access in New York. I hope he's wrong. Epilogue. Bad habits die hard, and all over the world parents are failing to protest against cruelty to children, disguised as a form of discipline. Adults in the room have to get wise, be more conscious and informed, and take an oath to immediately cease inflicting physical harm on our children, for that is making them as cruel as the punishment, and as destructive to their physical and emotional well-being as weapons of war. Free citizens in a democracy have an obligation to make policy changes in order to reverse the legislature's perversity, as was shown by the sudden and stunning psychoses. And doth too much protest syndrome in the laws affecting LGBTQ community and students. Freedom is no longer enjoyed by people who wish to learn from culture and history, a free press, the First Amendment rights of speech, global literature, and scientific learning. We have to stop the punishment